into Blackbird of Blackbird's Brew. Happy Sunday and welcome back to the Havamal. This week we're going to talk about verse 21, and as per usual we will begin with three different translations. The first translation reads, Cattle know when to go home, and when from grazing cease, but a foolish man never knows his stomach's measure. And that was by Benjamin Thorpe. Next translation. The herds know well when home they shall fare, and then from the grass they go. But the foolish man his belly's measure shall never know aright. And that is by H.A. Bellows. Now our last translation. The herd to know from home they shall, and gang up from the grass to their stalls. But the unwise man will not ever learn how much his maw will hold. And that is Lee M. Hollander. So, again, this week we are looking on a verse that is focused on the evils of gluttony. Now, in ancient times, the danger of starvation was a much more present and greater concern than overindulgence. But the fact that gluttony has been raised as an issue that is causing problems, it just tells me that even in difficulties, human beings are still subject to the same foibles, no matter what era they live in or how restricted resources tend to be. The person who is described as overeating is called foolish and unwise, and there's quite a few reasons why that would be true. Obviously, gluttony has a bad effect on a person's physical health, and the time period the Havamal was recorded had much more limited medical tools and knowledge than what we have today. So if a person became unhealthy as a result of overeating and then had an additional health problem, it could cost them their lives. And of course, if they died, that leaves problems for the family, possibly the entire community, especially if they were in a profession that they were the only ones who provided this service, and now what are people going to do? I mean, it had ripple effects for sure. But another issue is that when you are consuming too many resources, it actively creates hardship. And keep in mind, this was a civilization that was already accustomed to hardship. You know, they didn't need any more of that. And if you had one person in the community that was, doing the bulk of the eating, taking more than they should, then that led to other people going hungry. And not only is that unjust, it has the potential to destroy a community, quite literally, not just relationships. Now, the comparison between the cows in the field and the person who is overeating strikes me as important. Cows, as we know, are not skinny creatures, yet they do know when they've had their fill, and then they stop, and they don't go really outside of their natural programming. Whereas we humans, we don't really have a lot of internal programming. What we do have is considerable intelligence, especially in comparison with other species on this planet. But we don't always use that intelligence, do we? And of course, still less so do we use wisdom, and wisdom has to be something that is consciously cultivated and then acted upon. So we have to make choices, and we have to make sensible choices if we're going to get the benefit of our brains. And making choices that leads us away from the dangers of gluttony requires having a sense of personal values. And of course, to value something means to acknowledge that one thing is better than another, and that requires making judgments. And there is a misconception in some pagan schools of thought that say that we need to eschew any form of judgment. However, this verse in the Havamal makes it obvious that our ancestors did not agree with that. And I think there's a difference between judgment, of being able to determine what something is, whether it is an object or a behavior, or if it's some kind of esoteric realization. Judgment is just about knowing what something is. Now, condemnation, which is what is usually referred to when people start talking about judgment, even that is kind of a double-edged sword. People can be justly condemned, or they can be unjustly condemned. And I think it's more so about us needing to have a reservation about condemnation that will serve us well, rather than saying, oh no, we don't need to make judgments about anything. Yes, we do. We just need to operate in a sensible fashion and without undue malice. So those were the thoughts that this particular verse took me to. I'd be interested to think what the verse made you think about, so let me know in the comments below, or come see us on Discord at Blackbird's Brew. I can talk, I promise, but there is a link to join in the description box below. You would be very welcome there, and hopefully we'll see you soon. But that's all for now, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye!